A city with a tough history. Don't go in there unless you enjoy going to clip joints. The obelisks obviously we see in pretty much every major city. Completely headless, not thinking about what really is going on. That is why I think people look upon the poles with much fondness. It has a Berlin roughness to it. The all-seeing eye with the pyramid. We can only be in one place. Well, it could be any place, it could be any European city. But the thing that gives it away is what we see on the right-hand side, just below the all-seeing eye, the Polish flag. This is Poznan, this is one of the main squares in Poznan. Not the main square, but what I see over here is a symbol of Poznan. Poznan is represented by the billy goat gruff. And here we've got two billy goats having a little bit of a headbutt together. It's a favourite place for people to have their photos taken. It's a favourite place for people just to get that picture while the all-seeing eye looks down upon us. Now, as you notice around the square, and this is a beautiful square, we have security cameras over here. The all-seeing eye, does it represent the surveillance state that we live amongst right now?
DNA profiling, facial recognition, drone surveillance, drone strikes.
Well, who knows what it really represents. It is a bit strange to see the all-seeing eye up here. What's interesting about seeing the all-seeing eye overlooking this magnificent square, which I see over here, are the fact that we have the ruins of an old church. Now, this church used to be called the Mary Magdalene Church.
Mary Magdalene.
Before it was demolished in the beginning of the 19th century, around about 1801, 1802. Now, the reason it was demolished, it had a lot of unforeseen events. It had fire, it had invaders from Prussia.
Sir, the Prussians are here!
So it went into disrepair, so they decided to knock it down, and then they created this market square, this fabulous market square that clearly is no longer a market square. But what I find more fascinating is the fact that the all-seeing eye up here probably will be missed by many people. Maybe it's seen by everyone, but the all-seeing eye here overlooks the Church of Mary Magdalene. Now, Mary Magdalene, supposedly, maybe, was the girlfriend, the wife of Jesus.
Mary Magdalene, not Peter.
Now, obviously, the Bible that we know today doesn't make any mention of the fact that Mary Magdalene had a relationship with Jesus Christ.
I mean, I could have been knee-deep in Shepherd's Daughters, not to mention fine-ass Mary Magdalene.
But if it was true, and some say that the secret is being carried down by the Masons are guarding that secret, that Mary Magdalene had offspring, had a child, maybe more than one child with Jesus, and the legacy of Jesus Christ is carried on into the world today. Who really knows?
And this is from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene herself.
If you're curious about that, you're probably delving into the world of Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. It's pure speculation, but I think it's interesting. That looks down upon the ruins of the Mary Magdalene Church.
They are the protectors of the living descendants of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene.
Well, welcome to Poznan and welcome to another one of my videos. Thank you for joining me. I am Alex and I'm also known as the Wandering Englishman. This is a video I really hope you will enjoy.
Over here we have a plaque to Napoleon.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
And also Frédéric Chopin. I understand the plaque to Frédéric Chopin. Obviously he was a great composer. He passed through this area.
I faked a little Chopin, you faked a big response.
But Napoleon, to defeat the Prussians, and the Prussians obviously were the Germans, or the present day German, Napoleon helped out the Poles and they aligned themselves with Napoleon to basically push the Prussians out of Poland to what would then form Poland today.
I think they're Prussians.
And hence the reason Napoleon is commemorated with this plaque over here. I find myself in this square. This square is where the Tourist Information Centre is.
I have no intention of being a tourist.
Something that obviously a lot of tourists will pass through if they get the chance to visit Poznan. But I also think it's a nice point to have a conversation about Poznan. This is my second time in Poznan, but it's the first time of myself making a video here. I've only spent 24 hours in Poznan before, and this is another 24 hours in Poznan. And my objective of this video is to try and take in as much of Poznan.
Just 24 hours. That's all I ask.
For the benefit of you guys and also for the benefit of myself, because I don't think I really did it justice when I was last here. I used it as a stepping stone to get from London to Berlin, and the cheapest way at the moment to get to Berlin because Berlin has shut down its smaller airports and rebranded itself with the Brandenburg airport. Flights are now ridiculously expensive to Berlin. So a good way to get to Berlin for a lot of people these days is you fly into Poznan and then you get the train from Poznan, which is about 2.5 hours.
And once a month, he also travels to Berlin by train.
Now, I don't recommend getting the bus. I took the bus from Berlin to Poznan yesterday. Not only was it delayed, it was incredibly slow. So if you can avoid getting the bus, take the train, it's a far more comfortable journey. You're not stuck, crammed in next to a window, next to someone that's probably a little bit overweight, taking up more than their half of the seat.
How rude!
But this is a beautiful square. It really is beautiful. And this is one of the things that sort of defines what Poznan is. Generally, from what I've seen of Poznan so far, it is really, really magnificent. And that's why you should come join me and let's see what we see.
Of course, I won't be able to capture everything. That will be nigh on impossible. However, hopefully for regular viewers of my channel, hopefully you will be one of them one day, you will be familiar with how these videos are structured. Basically, me wandering around, trying to understand the dynamics of the city as best I can, and bringing you along for the ride. Poznan is located in west central Poland and first came about in the Middle Ages. The city is an important cultural and business center and one of Poland's most populous regions, with many regional customs such as St. John's Fair, and they even have a special type of croissant. It's not just the French that specialize in croissants, it's the Polish. They have this croissant called the St. Martin's croissant. Poznan is the 5th largest and one of the oldest cities in all of Poland, and it once for its sins used to be considered the capital of Poland.
One thing you'll notice about Poznan, and many Polish cities really, are the beautifully manicured gardens, this being one of them, this being just off from the square we've just visited. I have to say, when I find myself visiting cities, I always think, well, this would be a nice place to live. And so far, my impressions of Poznan, I could live here.
Hey, and I could live here.
I could live here so far. Now, I could be wrong.
Well, I could be wrong.
It's a big enough town to have vibrancy, and it's a small enough town to have the safetiness of what the town is.
So it's safe.
It's got a population of 550,000 people, and that's growing because the number of Ukrainians that have entered the city of Poznan since the start of the war on the 24th of February 2022, population has leaped. My guess is house prices have probably been moving up just like they have in the rest of the world. Rent prices have been moving up.
Now we've got inflation at fucking 25%.
But it is a city that is expanding for good reasons, which I think we will see as this video goes on. You'll start to see what makes this place quite special. Now over here is a man that we've seen much on the travels. This man, if we get a little bit closer, is the bust of Frédéric Chopin.
So Chopin, huh?
And he's much celebrated in Poland and certainly celebrated in this part of the world.
You know, Frédéric fucking Chopin.
For the fact that he spent time in Poznan. We're coming up just behind him and he's looking down onto this beautiful manicured garden. Hopefully I can step around without sort of doing a disservice to the monument of Frédéric Chopin. And that is a beautiful statue of him. He looks very regal. Looking down towards the nicely shaped trees over here. I think he would be pleased with this. I think he would be pleased for his memory to be carried on like this. Beautiful. Actually find ourselves in a market square. I can tell it's a little bit sort of tatty, but what we have here is this beautiful church.
The St. Francis Church was built in the 18th century. Most of the decor and the original furnishings were destroyed and looted during the Second World War. What you see today are mostly replicas, but a beautiful church nonetheless.
You might look around at a lot of the buildings in Poznan And over the course of this video, notice that there's similarities between the buildings here and the buildings in the Netherlands. That's because in the 18th century, a lot of Dutch came over to Poznan, not to conquer, not to cause angst or anguish. They came over to here to actually help build houses. It was their profession, they were good at it.
They were good.
And the Poznan people said, come to Poznan, build us some houses. And that's why many houses in Poznan look fairly similar to what you might see in the Netherlands. This man who's fixing the lights is called Ziggy.
Now Ziggy played guitar.
And Ziggy is effectively to commemorate all the men, maybe some women, probably mostly men.
I mean, let's be realistic.
Who spent their very early mornings putting out the light and their very, sometimes late evenings, certainly in the summer, turning on the lights. Men like this were all over Europe and also the North America. It's nice to see a statue like this commemorated. Ziggy
Then we were Ziggy's band.
Is not a real character, but I think he's been brought to life, and he's brought the men of the past to life. The hard-working men that lit the streets for the people of Poznan, but the people from all over the world, similar to Ziggy.
Then we were Ziggy's band.
Now, regular viewers of my channel probably remember, or probably realize, I don't tend to always show the beauty of places I visit. I tend to show the politics, I try to show the nitty-gritty, I try to show warts and all.
Warts and all. Actually, skip the warts.
Right now, I'm walking along, you can barely see it, through those trees. I'm walking along next to the River Warta. The River Warta cuts Poznan in half. Although I have to say that most of the activity in Poznan is on this side, which is on the west side of the river. But I think it's appropriate to try and take in as much of Poznan as possible, certainly for your benefit. And I believe on the east side, northeast from here, there's a cathedral. And I think just for the fact that it's a cathedral, but I think it's worth visiting. And what a beautiful day. Who wouldn't want to walk along a path with trees on one side, the river behind it, and then what is an old factory with the locals' graffiti work going on in the background. Some, probably not many, will be the next Banksy. Probably none, judging by this graffiti. It makes me feel at home. It makes me feel like I'm in Berlin again.
I fucking love Berlin.
And I have to say, anytime I'm in Berlin, and I appreciate I've made very little content in Berlin, Berlin has a generally strict no photos, no cameras policy in a lot of the places I tend to go to. Nightclubs do not allow cameras.
I must ask you that no photos be taken, and please do not feed the performers. Thank you.
So here we go. Here's the River Warta over here. And I think that in the distance is the cathedral we are heading to, that we can hear the bell for. Now, judging by the bells, that I believe is the cathedral, and from my observations of just looking at the map, and I think there might be a map over here, this side is a little island. The island starts from over here, similar to the islands you get in Paris on the River Seine.
There used to be another church or cathedral at the same.
Here we have the cathedral on the island, and I imagine it was put on the island to give it that extra protection. We're going to head, I think, across the bridge, I hope. It doesn't look, yeah, there's people walking across that bridge. Head into the cathedral and then just take it in. Not the prettiest part of Poznan, it has to be said, and possibly the part of Poznan that was maybe neglected, but at the same time, I'm loving the feel of this city so far. It has a Berlin roughness to it, but it also has prettiness to it, which you'll see later in the center. Similar to Krakow or Gdansk, this is one of those cities that I think probably has to be seen to really appreciate it. A common topic for visitors visiting Poland is World War II and what happened here in World War II. Well, I made a very detailed video on Oskar Schindler when I was in Krakow. Obviously, Oskar Schindler saved a huge number of the Jewish population. It has to be remembered that it wasn't just the Jews that suffered in the Second World War, it was the Poles as well. 2.8 million Poles were exterminated by the Nazis. Pretty much the same number as Jews. So in total, it was just under 5.6 million total people were exterminated by the Nazis during the Second World War. the Poles had a hard time of it. Now, don't get me wrong, the number of Jews in Poznan before World War II started was roughly 2,000. Most of those 2,000 disappeared, but at the same time, far greater number of Poles disappeared in Poznan due to the Nazi occupation and then later the Soviet occupation. A city with a tough history, a city with a hard history, which has probably made the people as stoic as they are. One thing you have to admire about the Poles, and I think any Western European will appreciate this, is their hard work ethic. Poles are notorious for working hard and just getting the job done, which is why many in the UK, France, the Netherlands, even Germany to an extent, were griping when suddenly the Poles had access to all of the European Union. But if anything, I think they brought positivity to the countries that they entered. They integrated well, and that is why I think people look upon the Poles with much fondness. Sadly, you can't say the same about every person that has entered Western Europe, but that's a topic for another day, and it's a topic that will probably get me demonetized if I push that one further. Very common way of getting around the city. Bit of transport I used last time I was here when I was trying to get myself from the centre to the train station or from the centre to the airport is the tram. Pretty affordable, certainly more affordable than in other parts of Europe. A nice way of getting around, the tram lines cutting through the city. The tram avoids the centre of the old town, but it does loop round the city, and I think it's a far more enjoyable way of getting around when you need to than the automobile. Obviously, for the less able or for the more lazy in you, you could take in the hop-on, hop-off bus.
$13 all day, hop on, hop off, Hollywood bus tour.
That obviously frequents many European cities. They're all the same. The old London double-decker bus.
That bus is a lifeline.
And it will take you to this island called Ostrów Tumski. And on this island, like I say, to the east of the main area of the city, but one of the oldest parts of the city, here you will find a religious site where this beautiful Roman Catholic cathedral is. And I think it would be fitting for us to go inside and explore. I hope there won't be an entrance fee, but you never know. But this is magnificent. First time I've seen any of this.
It's new to me. My life's changing.
Over here we have this beautiful statue of Jesus up here. No, it's not. Of course it's Mary. I'm as blind as a bat.
Oh, sweet mother of Jesus.
Now this is not something you see every day next to a church. We have this wall effectively for sitting upon, made out of glass down here. Very, very beautiful. Clearly modernized the church. One of the beautiful things about the Polish people is they take Christian religion very seriously. Now the majority of Poles are Catholics. It's been beneficial for most Western churches to suddenly have a more fuller congregation as the Poles have migrated into Western Europe. Certainly in the last 20 years, the churches are filled up with people who are seeking to worship the Lord from Polish origin. Now this cathedral, it reminds me of the church, maybe cathedral, that I failed to go into in Potsdam in Germany. Now we are not too far from Potsdam in Germany. Like I said, it takes 2 and a bit hours on the train, 3 hours by bus to get from Berlin to Poznan. So my belief is there was probably a collaboration with church design when it comes to the church that you see in the centre of Poznan to this cathedral on the east side, on the island, in the middle of the river, Warta. You find this beautiful Catholic cathedral. Now let's go in.
This is the Archcathedral Basilica of St. Peter and St. Paul. It is one of the oldest churches in all of Poland and the oldest Polish cathedral, dating from the 10th century. The cathedral was originally built in the second half of the 10th century within the fortified settlement of Poznan, which stood on what is now called the Ostrów Tumski, the island which we now stand upon. This was one of the main political centres in the early Polish state and included a ducal palace excavated by archaeologists in 1999 beneath the Church of the Virgin Mary, which stands in front of the cathedral, which is where we saw the Virgin Mary just a minute ago. The palace included a chapel, perhaps built by Dobrawa, the Christian wife of Poland's first historical ruler, Mieszko I. Mieszko himself was baptized in 966, possibly in Poznan on this island. This is regarded as a key event in the Christianization of Poland and the consolidation of the state. The cathedral, of course, was built around this time. It was raised to the status of cathedral in 968 when the first missionary bishop, Bishop Jordan, came to Poland. St. Peter became the patron of the church because at the first cathedral in the country, it had the right to have the same patron as St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. The pre-Romanesque church, which was built at the time, was about 48 meters in length. Remains of this building are still visible in the basements of today's basilica. The first church survived for about 70 years until the period of the pagan reaction and the raid of the Bohemian Duke Bretislav in between 1034 and 1038. The cathedral was rebuilt in the Romanesque style, remains of which are visible in the southern tower. In the 14th and 15th century, the church was rebuilt in the Gothic style. At that time, a crown of chapels was added. A fire in 1622 did such serious damage that the cathedral needed a complete renovation, which was carried out in the Baroque style. Another fire broke out in 1772, and the church was rebuilt in the neoclassical style. In 1821, Pope Pius VII raised the cathedral to the statue of Metropolitan of Arch Cathedral and added the second patron, St. Paul. The last of the great fires occurred on the 15th of February 1945, during the liberation of the city from the Germans. The damage was serious enough that the conservators decided to return to the Gothic style using a base of medieval relics revealed by the fire. The cathedral was thankfully reopened on the 29th of June 1956, and in 1962 Pope John XIII gave the church the title of the Minor Basilica. If you're fascinated about cathedrals similar to this, I've done an entire church playlist. That church playlist is expanding each time I release a video that features exclusively a church or a cathedral. So do check it out. And also let me know in the comments below if you think this cathedral is comparable to the cathedral that's closest to your home.
Well, truly an immense cathedral. It looped round the centre and it went back into every little side area, had little rooms. I didn't obviously want to be talking inside. There was a couple of tours going on inside actually, it surprised me, even though it said silence. 4 zloty to get in for students, 5 zloty for adults. I'm sure by the time you watch this video prices will have gone up, but it's a discretionary charge. The nice thing about most churches, they allow you to enter. But what a magnificent church. And if you do get a chance to enter, take a moment in there. It is a beautiful church. If you find yourself on the cathedral island, you can go for long walks around the many cobbled paths dotted around this island. I think there's a couple of museums, this maybe being one of them. But what I've come over here to find is Poland's greatest poet. I'm going to try and see if I can find a statue dedicated to him. And I didn't really have to look far, just another 10 meters. This is Jan Kochankiewicz, and he's supposedly Poland's greatest poet, second in line to a poet called Adam Mickiewicz. It's a name I remember. One of my ex-girlfriends was a Mickiewicz, and I'm sure I'm still, despite dating her, pronouncing that name wrong. A fine obelix symbolizing the Masonic symbology that is propagated in Poznan. There's clearly a strong Masonic influence in Poznan, just like there is in Potsdam, some 2.5 hours away. So we're going to head back over the river Warta to the main part of Poznan, and I'm going to take in the northern part of the city, which is up here, and I think I'm going to head towards that green area over there, I think, because there's a park with some magnificent monuments there, from what I think Google was trying to tell me. Obviously all of this is new. When I was last here, it was a brief flying visit. I arrived in the evening. I met up with an old Ukrainian friend who's now settled in this city, and we had dinner, and then the next day I jumped on the train to Berlin for a weekend of Berlin action that can't be shown on YouTube.
I heard about that little job you pulled off in Berlin. Very nice, Dutch.
Look, you got a gentleman down here fishing. What a beautiful day. Looking a little bit like John Malkovich from Con Air these days.
Welcome to Con Air.
Last couple of weeks I've opted for the ginger goatee. Thought I'd give it a go. I'm going to try everything once. When you've lost everything up here, you may as well try to experiment with what's down here. Probably be gone in a couple of weeks, but we shall see.
Suddenly, it was gone.
Here we see an old Polish factory possibly remnants of the Soviet era, but also remnants of what this town used to be. This town used to be a very industrial town, but now a lot of the money being made in this town is on the back of the service industry, it's on the back of people using their brain power. In the distance, in the foreground, behind the crumbling factory that's probably going to be turned into probably plush apartment, you see more plush apartments. This town is on the up, but on the outskirts here, you probably wouldn't think it. But I guess in 20 years, this town's going to look very, very different. And just to give you some perspective, there's the cathedral over there. So to get to this park, you have to head up a very busy road to the northern part of the city, across the railway tracks, probably to a point in the city that you might not think to venture, but thank God for maps, because if I didn't have the map, then I wouldn't know about this park. But let's see if it's worth the journey. I'm feeling a little bit sweaty right now. Hopefully it'll be worth it. One thing you have to take very seriously in Poland is the traffic light. Now, unlike in the UK where you can just carelessly walk across any street you want within limits, I don't advise that on motorways, but it's very common in London just to be walking where you care, because the traffic in London doesn't move very fast, and you can jaywalk in front of a policeman in the UK and nothing will happen to you. Whereas if you jaywalk in Poland, and I discovered this when I was in Krakow at the beginning of the summer, you will get in trouble. Now, lucky for me, I met two fine Polish police officers, very attractive female police officer and a very strong male police officer, and they gave me the benefit of the doubt, because I basically said, I'm sorry officers, it's my first day here. I didn't realize jaywalking was a crime, but it is. Sadly, or in a good way it is, I think, sadly, I think. But you know what it does mean? It means that Poles are very law-abiding, in a positive way, I think. The crime rate in Poland is incredibly low. People respect their environment. People respect the place they live. I think there's two factors behind that. It's the fact that, one, the laws are in place and the police do make sure that these laws are followed. But second, and I've gone over this a few times in many videos, and it's a reason where sometimes I get a dislike on, Poland is a very homogenous society. With homogenous society comes benefits. Benefits where you trust your neighbours, you know your neighbours. Now, London, on the other hand, Paris, Brussels aren't homogenous, and the crime is shooting through the roof. Now, you might want to look into reasons why that is, but I'll let you explore that in the comments below.
This is the park Citadel, on the site of the old fort winery. It contains a military museum, military cemeteries, and the remains of some of the fortifications.
As I walk up more stairs in the centre of this beautiful park in the northernmost point of Poznan, I think we will discover that it's a monument to those that lost their lives in the Second World War. But I could be wrong. Let's see if we can find out. It is rather beautiful. No. 1986, Desmond Pogodzio. I don't know what that means. Thankfully I have Wikipedia. This is the bell that symbolises peace amongst nations. And what a beautiful bell. Sometimes this rings out. And basically this park used to be an old Prussian fortress. So parts of this park you'll find remains of the old Prussian fortress. The Prussians obviously were what would then later become the Germans and the German Empire. But let's take in this magnificent point in the city. I see something over here.
In the post-war period, the site of the Fort Winery was converted into Citadel Park. Most of the fortifications were demolished, although some structures can still be seen.
I have to say, as I look upon this, I'm a little bit confused. Is this a piece of modern art, or is this an old sculpture that's suffered over time? Here we have Nike by Bazalija Wojciechowicz. Now, Nike was the goddess of war, the goddess of winning in music, winning in the arts, winning in any field, and I guess that is what her wings symbolise. She always had wings, so that's her wings on the back. Not the greatest statue of Nike I've ever seen, and certainly not an advert for the shoes.
What kind of skins is them? What's that writing mean? Nike, what is that, some sort of engine talk or something?
For some of you, I hear you thinking, that is the original Greek goddess.
Nike is state-of-the-art hardcore woman power.
I don't think that's... probably looks better from a distance, similar to a Monet. Step back and it does look better. Go too close and it looks very ugly.
It is Monet, and it is very fine indeed.
Neglected behind this tree and in this sort of fairly neglected area where the benches still got the marks of COVID, you can tell that nobody's really cared for this, is an old Soviet monument. We can see the Soviet star up there, and sadly the Poles aren't too fond of the Soviets, so they've pretty much neglected this, unlike in Berlin where there's a Soviet monument right next to the
Brandenburg Gate,
which is incredibly well maintained. This one has been neglected, and I hate to say it, but this one will probably, over time, if nothing's been done, because the Poles live here, it won't get vandalised. It seems to be getting neglected.
Park Citadel also houses the Spitzelklegs Laboratorium building, as well as a new military museum. There's also the Poznan Army Museum on the southern edge of the park, which we will go to later in this video.
Now, I'm not deliberately looking for this theme, but I think we're starting to see a theme in Poznan. The theme...
There, another obelisk.
The obelisk. The obelisk, obviously, we see in pretty much every major city across the planet.
The obelisk. The obelisk is the key?
Despite the fact the obelisk originated from ancient Egypt, we now see the obelisk in every major city that is inhabited by Freemasonry influence. Here we have a straight line leading down towards the obelisk, parting. I'm sure if we looked at this from above, this might give us a lot of symbology. Remember, they walk amongst us, they control much of what we do, what we watch on television, and what we're exposed to. They're all around us, and this monument that is an obelisk tells us the Freemasons have a presence around here.
Obelisks are symbols related to the Egyptian sun god Ra. The word obelisk literally means Baal's shaft, or Baal's organ of reproduction. It is said that Christians have the cross, but the Illuminati have their obelisk.
What's interesting about this one is they've added to the obelisk. And look at the other side, it goes down all the way like this. So it really is centerpiece when it comes to this park. This takes us out of the park. But this is a Soviet monument. We've got the Soviet star. I did not realize this. So at least this one is reasonably taken care of. Wow. Now here's a man that basically spent his life behind the Iron Curtain. I mean, look at this guy. Wazilu Iwanowski's Keziluka now from 1900 to 1982, but what I love is the font. Amazing font. Lucky man. I've just seen through the trees the thing that I really wanted to come see, and it's these tanks.
He sees tiger tanks, 2 of them.
Whereas that Soviet monument was neglected, over here, this is all fairly well looked after. The fact that these tanks are outside for members of the public to climb all over tells me that they are still looked after.
This is the entrance to the Armament Museum, and this is the former winery fort on the Poznan Citadel. The Prussians built the fort between 1828 and 1842.
I mean, these are some beautiful tanks. There is a sign that says don't be climbing on these tanks, but I'm pretty sure that people do. I'm not going to do that myself, just simply because I think these are almost like works of art. This is a T-34. Beautiful tanks. Obviously not so beautiful when you're trying to avoid these things and they're basically destroying your home or invading your land.
All tanks, war daddy.
But still, you have to admire these things. Amazing, amazing pieces of equipment. Ancient equipment now, by today's standards. IS-2. Ever seen one of those? This is a T-55 tank. This is a juggernaut of a tank. And over here, well, who really knows?
Aren't you glad the army has all these tanks parked here?
What video would be complete without a tour around the local war museum? And fate would have it, I find myself here on a Tuesday, and only on Tuesday the museum is free. Normally luck is against me because I wander into these places on Mondays, which tend to be closed.
During the German occupation of 1939 to 1945, Poznan was incorporated into Nazi Germany as the capital of the Reichsgar Waffland. Many Polish inhabitants were executed, arrested, expelled to the German government, or used as forced labor. At the same time, many Germans and the Volksdeutsch were settled in the city. The German population increased from around 5,000 in 1939, some 2% of inhabitants, to around 95,000 in 1944. However, it all came to a crashing end for the Germans in 1945 with the Battle of Poznan.
Look at this, the different types of rucksacks used over the years.
This was the assault by the Soviet Union's Red Army that had as its objective the elimination of the Nazi German garrison in the stronghold city of Poznan.
Still in this park with the obelisk right behind us, we have this beautiful MiG-15. Now, you might remember from my video from Ukraine to Naples, the last time we saw the MiG-15. It was on a crumbling monument.
Tell me about the MiG some other time.
This one is a little bit better kept after, but first seen during the Korean War, and at the time, this put the Soviets ahead of the Americans. This was a cutting-edge piece of technology when it was released between 1948 and the early 50s. What a machine, but now just sort of sat there, end of days, a museum piece along with all these weaponry. But what an impressive little park. I think this museum possibly was remnants of the old Prussian barracks. I think that's what it symbolizes, but I could be wrong on this, but it would make sense. But there's a lot of war history in Poland. Let's just sort of take it in, shall we?
If you're into your war history, I urge you to check out the history of the Prussian army in this part of Poland, and I also urge you to look into the Battle of Poznan. This was a gruesome, chaotic battle that lasted over a month, and it really needs to be dissected and understood.
Here we have army boats, more tanks. It's almost like a military graveyard in a way, because there isn't really much description when it comes to these things. There are, in fact. What am I talking about? It's the NTLB armored personnel character, Soviet. Look at this. Look at the red squirrel. Just chilling. See, that's something I like about this part of the world. The red squirrel hasn't been displaced by a prolific grey squirrel from North America, which has happened in the UK. The Polish red squirrel still fights on, and this is a H-28 bomber aircraft, Soviet. That's the nice thing about this part of the world. Where in the UK you see a lot of, RAF or American technology. Here, and obviously in the old Soviet countries, you'll see a lot of the old Soviet technology. It's worth coming to these places just to see a sort of different perspective and slight different take on the machines that we know and love, the machines that put so much fear into our governments and wasted so much money for the populations, to the extent that it would eventually send the USSR bankrupt by producing all this. Here we have the MiG-21 aircraft from the late 50s.
Your MiG sighting is really important to my work, but
And this rust bucket here is Su-20 fighter bomber aircraft from the Soviet days. This was still in the air up until 1997. You wouldn't know it today. Now it's just sitting there rusting.
If you've made it this far and you haven't clicked that subscribe button already, what are you doing? Help me out and click that subscribe button. Thank you very much.
Wow, look at this. To see through, you'd have to look out of this glass over here just to be able to fire these guns. Good luck with that. This park is infamous for its random modern art. This one, thankfully, nature is taking over and this will soon vanish. But what I came for is what I can see through the clearing over here are these headless statues. Now, not headless because some unscrupulous vandal has taken a hammer to them and knocked all their heads off, but this is how they were intended to be.
That's a relief.
Now, obviously, that's up to the artist involved who's being paid the very high commission to put these statues up, but let's go have a look. Now, obviously, this being modern art, you can make of it what you want. Obviously, the artist has one idea, but the person viewing it has another idea. What this conjures up in my mind is what we saw between March 2020 and until pretty much recently in 2022. People walking around completely headless, not thinking about what really is going on. Headless humans, unaware of their surroundings, maybe NPCs as you would say. People not really utilizing their brains, questioning what is it all about? Questioning why am I partaking in this charade? Why must life be like this? This is interesting, isn't it? Wow. What an art piece. Because of tensions due to the Ukraine war,
Ну, просто не оставили никаких шансов поступить иначе. Отреагировать было невозможно.
Громадяни суспільства, тут всі ми тут захищаємо нашу незалежність.
Soviet war memorials have become a target to vandals, idiotic vandals, and yeah, this one is no exception to the rule. These men gave their lives for and without them we wouldn't be around today, but some friggin' idiot with no IQ has now gone and vandalized this. Morons. Absolute morons. The Soviets encompassed Poland, the Soviets encompassed Ukraine, Belarus, and yet, sickening.
Yeah. Pan scum.
The lower south side of the park commemorates the soldiers with war graves. Sadly, a vandal has hit this one. I don't understand people. The IQ of people living amongst us is, well, the bell curve is a bell curve for a reason. 50% of the population is on the left side of the bell curve. And because of that, we get mongoloids vandalizing old Soviet graves. If we ignore that and just appreciate it, very beautiful, very, very beautiful. Apart from the loud, noisy road to my left, if we could just try to ignore that and my voice, we could take in this. Almost a smaller version of Arlington Cemetery, just on the other side of Washington, D.C. in Virginia. Arlington Cemetery commemorates the dead from the many wars the US has been part of. You get a chance to visit Washington, D.C., hop over to the other side to Virginia, and you'll get to experience one of the most moving cemeteries I've ever been to.
Arlington, please.
Now this is also a beautiful cemetery. It's only spoiled by the fact there's a busy road there through the clearing. Like all European cities, one way to get around is to take the Lime scooters. Now, if you want a code for your first 3 rides to be free, use the code in the description below and you'll get free rides with Lime. Pretty good. I generally find each journey, depending on which European city you are in, generally is between 2 and 5 euros depending on each journey. Obviously not economical to be used all the time, but if you don't mind paying between 2 and 5 euros depending on how long your journey is, also a bit of fun. And also if you fancy it, 2 people can get on those things, but be careful. People have been injured. As I walk through another park on my way back to the center of the city, I'm trying to decipher what the hell this is. Any guesses yet? Actually, I can see 1939, so I'm immediately thinking it's a war memorial. 1939, yes, it is a war memorial. Wow. Well, the Soviets don't do them like this anymore, do they? Well, Soviets don't do anything anymore, thankfully. Well, for the time being, but this is magnificent. It's really magnificent. And this is where you'd expect the eternal flame to be. I don't think it's lit, if there is one. You know, I wasn't sure what to make of it. I kind of like it. It's very different. It makes the point, the brutalism maybe of war. I like it. Over there, another magnificent church. Loving the wooden addition to it. Here we have a statue of a monk. Should we find out who this monk is? Or is it a Pope? And then right behind us, Rafał Kalelewinski. I think he may have been a priest. Look at this, probably commanding over the Basilica Minor. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And you wonder why the Poles are so religious and they have these sort of institutions. But what's interesting, here we have it again, an obelisk on either side of this church. You know, you tell me what that might mean.
The St. Joseph Church is a monastic church. The Baroque three-nave church was built on the base of a cross. This Catholic church is a very popular place for confession, so renowned in fact that people come from far and wide simply to confess in this church. Originally this is where the St. George's Church stood from the middle of the 14th century to the end of the 16th. Later there was a Czech friars temple here, destroyed in 1616. 2 years later the Carmelites settled here and built a wooden chapel. The present church was built between 1644 and 1677. A monastery was built adjacent to this church, but in 1831 the Prussian authorities closed down the monastery. And then later in that year the church became an evangelical garrison church, although after Poland regained its independence it became a Catholic garrison church. The galleries built by the Protestants were demolished. In 1945 the Carmelites returned to the damaged buildings. The interior that we see owes its look to the general reconstruction done between 1984 and 1988.
Once again, the second church of the day that I visited where there was no one inside. By the time I exited that church, there was 2 people when I arrived. By the time I exited, no one. Another eye. Nice little playing area for kids. We've got a football pitch here, we've got a gym over here, we've got basketball courts over here, with swings and everything for the kids. Not too bad. I tell you, with the hot sun and walking around all day, it's time to, I think, get a refreshing drink. And it looks like this would be the perfect place to get a beer, I think. Probably shouldn't be having beer, being so dehydrated, but I'll have one with a bottle of water, I think. Why not? Oh, first time I stayed in Poznan, I stayed in this building that's just behind the stage, B&B Hotel. Actually a really nice hotel. This time I'm staying in a similar type of place, but this one is just an apartment. But this one is not bad. I tell you, this is one of the better mass-produced beers in Poland.
What kind of beer?
IPA. They would call IPA. They should say IPA. It was the English that invented the IPA after all. But I won't hold that against them because that's a good IPA. Or it's IPA, as they say, from Rajkaka, Szkolka, Piłowska. Amazingly difficult language.
I have respect for beer.
Well, I've had my beer, I'm refreshed. Haven't had lunch yet, but I'm still yet to explore this magnificent city as we head more closer into the old town, which is where I'm staying.
You will have to forgive me. Up until now, I've been skirting around Poznan, and now we find ourselves right in the center of Poznan, taking in the sights and the sounds of what Poznan has to offer.
I tell you, to be a young boy today, jumping in that fountain looks a lot of fun. At the moment, it's about 31 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so right now it's at 86 Fahrenheit.
Nice temperature. Beautiful, beautiful square. Now what I've noticed, and I've got to give you a bit of forewarning, in Poznan at the moment, they're redeveloping everything. When I say redeveloping, They're basically making their cobble streets more beautiful. So there's a lot of building work going on. So if you're considering a visit to Poznan, 2023 onwards, I think would probably be the best time to visit.
So noted.
Because at the moment, as we head towards the old town, there's a lot of dusty streets. As you can see, we got dust galore. The guys are working hard. You know what they're doing? They're going to make it very, very nice around here. And no, I'm not working for the mayor of Poznan. I'm not working for the Polish Tourist Board. I'm working just for myself, for you guys, to give you an insight into what Poznan is, and also to give you an insight into what all of these places are. There's hundreds and hundreds of videos on my channel right now. I'm hoping after this, as long as I don't get run over by this guy, you might check out at least one of them.
Yeah, maybe I will.
So this gives me memories of architecture that you might find in Kiev. And then when we go up here, we got the mosaics, so it's spliced with Roman, Greek architecture. It's a really interesting city. And then over here, almost Romanesque architecture. Quite common if you're in the city of Krakow. Oh, and the statue that we saw back there of the man, he built this hotel, the Hotel Bazaar. As we pass around the corner, Pedaleski go. Notice I can talk a little bit better now I've had a beer. We get to this monumental statue. And I think over here, could it be? It could be. Is that St. George killing the dragon? Or is it someone else? I don't know.
This is the 15th Poznan Uhlan Regiment. The cavalry unit fought between the First World War and the Second World War. The unit is celebrated here for its bravery. They were at their most significant in the war against the Soviets between 1919 and 1920, actually getting as far as Minsk with their attack against the Soviets.
What we're going to do is we're going to go head this way. I've got to go this way because I've promised myself I'm going to have some ramen before the sun goes down, and I'm also going to put some batteries on charge, otherwise we're not going to be able to finish this video. Are we in Ibiza?
Ibiza?
The Pasha shop. Pasha shut down. Or maybe, what am I talking about? Maybe there is actually a Pasha nightclub here. I wish I'd known about this. I wish I'd been here. There is a Pasha nightclub. I wish I'd been here at the weekend. You too could experience the delights of Poznan nightlife. I just hope it's better than the Pasha nightclub that existed in London. Sadly, I'm guilty of playing at over the years, but it wasn't very good. It wasn't a very good nightclub. The one in Ibiza is obviously one of the best nightclubs in the world. Not as good as Amnesia, I might add, or DC-10. Because the streets are so dusty, you got to watch your footing, especially as you're going down the hill. Now this is a fun place. This is open late. This is called Ramen. It's a place to get cheap beer, sit out, watch the dusty streets of Poznan. And here we go. We've got the world's cleverest birds here. Quite young chaps here. Hello.
Just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back to put the wrong things right.
As we enter the main square, and I want to give you some perspective, it reminds me of what Lviv's main square is. If you picture Lviv in Ukraine, you have the tower in the middle, the tower which you can climb up, and then you got all these beautiful buildings around the outside. Now you got to remember, Lviv in Ukraine used to be Poland, and it seems that the Stary Redneck Square, it's like we're going to get sprayed upon by these guys. It really isn't much fun right now, but in 2023, I can imagine this square is going to be very beautiful. We've got almost similar statues to what you would get in Lviv. You've got Poseidon over here with his trident. I think it might be. This is something I didn't notice when I was walking through the streets last night. This is Poseidon. This square is reminiscent of Rhinox Square. And what's interesting is right over here we got the Cherry Bar. And right next to the Cherry Bar is a place that I hope all tourists avoid. Try not to get too filthy in the mud. This is a very dodgy establishment. It's called Extravagance. Now, don't go in there unless you enjoy going to clip joints. Now, I haven't been in there myself, but many friends have warned me of this place. And if you look on the reviews on Google Maps, you'll see that many people have been fleeced. What's interesting is right opposite Poseidon, or as Neptune is called, this place called Neptune. Right opposite the statue of Poseidon. The hustle and bustle you can picture as the Ukrainians have flocked to Poznan, those who've been displaced from Lviv maybe I've probably headed to Poznan just to feel at home. We've got the Dubrovnik here. Look at these beautiful buildings, reminiscent of Lviv. Wow, what a beautiful building. What a beautiful square, I mean. Let's continue. I hope that by the time you visit here, this will all be complete, because right now it's quite atrocious. As you can see, builders going on here. They have really picked the worst time to be messing with the square, but obviously these things need to be done. And you know what? The streets I've seen that have been done, unlike Sadiq Khan in London, they've been done well. There are streets in London that look like Frankenstein's monster because of the bad job that the mayor's team have done to the streets to repair them, or not repair them as in most cases in London. But at least here, they're taking their time and they're going to repair the beautiful square. I think probably by 2023, tourism comes back. Thanks to maybe videos like this, we're going to be able to appreciate the fountains. And hopefully, you'll be able to send me your picture of you next to these fountains. I wonder who this chap is over here. I'm getting absolutely filthy. I picked the worst time to walk through here. Picture yourself on a building site right now. I mean, we could literally be in Lviv. It's identical. It's uncanny how identical this square is. And the law of sod means this guy's following me around, but I'm going to get out of here. All right, thanks for that. See, it takes a lot of effort. They're going to be putting down these huge blocks to make this city beautiful once again. But I think as we get to the next part of the street, you'll witness what they've done and what it will look like. Normality returns just over here. There we go. See the size of these blocks down here. These blocks make the streets super beautiful. And look at this. We're back on the other side of that big factory, if you recall. And we're going to head down here. I'm going to go have some lunch. I had to stop outside this restaurant. It's called Tempura Ya. It's every South African's favorite tempura restaurant, and everyone that lives around the King's Road favorite tempura restaurant. Tempura Ya.
Just a heads up, this is one of the most phenomenal places to eat ramen in all of Poznan, and it was probably one of the best ramens I had this entire year, and really big thanks to the service there. They went out of their way to make me feel welcome and appreciated, so thank you to the servers of that restaurant.
Well, I'm absolutely stuffed. I had a massive lunch and now I'm trying to take in the rest of the town, and I think I'm going to fail badly at this one. Well, here I am back in the main square that looks almost identical to Rhinoc Square, but it has to be said, the main town hall or building in the middle of the square is actually far more impressive than the Rhinoc Square one.
This incredibly impressive building is the Poznan Town Hall, and it harps back to the 13th century, built when the city was founded in 1253, although due to fire was rebuilt between 1550 and 1560. It was the seat of local government until 1939. It now houses a museum, and as you can see, it was impossible for me to actually get to on this day.
It is a real shame for the businesses on the outside of the square. Obviously this square would be teeming with life if all of this equipment wasn't here, but obviously by the time 2023 comes around, you can imagine that the streets will get very, very busy. As you can see, they're putting in a lot of work on this main square, putting these huge pipes in, so this is a serious construction project going on, not just putting in the stonework, putting an effectively underground system. Maybe it's the sewage works, maybe it's the waste works, who knows.
I am 100% coming back to Poznan, so I'm going to try my best to make a follow-up video showing the beauty of the town hall. I hear it is remarkable inside. And if you'd like to see a follow-up in regards to places I may have missed in this video, do leave a comment below because I will try my best to do a video of that location.
For me, it's the details in this building that's fascinating. We've got this chap up here, JB Quadro, and then this is the Museum of Henryka Chernolitskaya, probably brutalizing that, sadly closed. But here we are back again, having done a lap of the square. Just a shame that we can't take it all in. I'm going to walk up these steps. It's the old castle walls, I think. I think it got remade back in the day. Here we have the church once again. First time in a long time I've been avoiding Brits while being in this city. I've noticed in a number of bars there's been a number of Brits, and I have to say slightly embarrassed by the way they behave. Rather than speak politely to the locals, some of these Brits, well, it's shameless to be honest. Have you ever seen that show? That's how they speak to some of the Poles around here.
I apologize for our intrusion.
Wow. Look at this. All closed there. Ladybird on me. It is a magnificent city. Around each corner there's something. And normally around each corner there's a church. Thankfully they're not judgmental, the Poles, because the nightlife does get quite leery. What is this guy doing? Come on. Hop off. There we go, he's gone. I think with the heat, the heavy sun, and the fact that there's construction everywhere, I think is one of the reasons I'm struggling to take in all of the city that needs to be taken in. But I'm trying to take it all in, despite the roadworks everywhere. I can see the vision. It's just not quite ready, or had a bit of a time out, waiting for the next wave of tourists to come.
Also, in regards to making follow-ups, I'm more than happy to make follow-ups on any location I previously visited. So if you have some suggestions, please leave a comment below.
And we have a slightly daring designed futuristic mall. If you're into the malls, but you can see, look, this is all brand new. See the change that's happening here from the old cobblestones to the new cobblestones. I just hope they manage to make it as pretty as what I've seen where there isn't work going on. Around every corner. I mean, it's a monumental job. I think the locals are going to be pleased when it's done. But for the moment, it makes navigating around the city a little bit problematic.
Bedouins have been navigating this desert for centuries without a map.
And obviously, as we turn the corner, we find another church. That impressive monument is one of the Poznan's great industrialists. He founded one of the first daily newspapers, and obviously he added much to the business sense of this industrial town, hence celebrated there. Here we find the busiest street in the centre of Poznan. It goes all the way up this way to this way, I think east to west. And it is effectively Poznan's busiest street. You come down here at the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, all of these bars are teeming. There's bars, 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 and I think that's what I'm going to do this evening. And I think as evening starts to close in upon us, I think now's the time to head back, freshen up, try and take in the festivities on my final night in Poznan, and well, let's see how it goes, shall we? You might remember at the beginning of the video we saw the church from the other side, and this is the church from this side. Phenomenal. Well, not really the church, this is the quad. Do you remember where the square was with the tourist information? Well, if you go through here, the other side, you get to it. But this is my mistake. The door is here to the square. And this is just the church that is closed at the moment. And this is pretty much where we began. If you remember from the start of the video, we began at this square where the all-seeing eye with the goats looked out towards the now ruined Mary Magdalene Church. So as I head back towards my accommodation, which I believe is just over here, I'm gonna go freshen up, as they say, in the plush toilets of Mayfair.
I want to go freshen up and get out my traveling clothes.
And maybe I'll take you with me. Maybe. Let's see.
Teraz Kaperianin, też Hazy IPA, tym razem niestety, a nie, New England IPA. Będzie trochę coś takiego, 17.
Well, I managed to get a little bit of sunstroke. I feel exhausted, so the evening has not gone to plan. I'm meeting an old friend, just gonna have a quick pint of 12.5%. It's decent. And let's see where the evening takes us.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's
Cheers in Poznan.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I hate to say it, but 24 hours in Poznan isn't enough. I had a great time last night. I had a great time exploring the city, but the reality is I'm going to need to come back to explore a little bit more, to take in a few more of those monuments, to take in all of those museums that I may have missed. Now I find myself heading back towards Poznan Airport, very affordable airport, but the best way to get there, buy yourself one of those machines over there, 10 Polish zloty ticket. For 10 Polish zloty, you can get yourself a 24-hour ticket on the trams, the buses, and it will take you anywhere. I think I just wanted to be in shot. Anyway, so I'm going to jump on this tram and then I'll take another tram towards the airport. It's going to take me about 35 to 40 minutes from here. Let's see how easy the journey is to Poznan Airport. These guys seem to be following me everywhere. On my way to the second tram, I just had to cross under the underpass just down here. Now I'm going to go to the other tram just over here. These guys are following me. And that's it. I arrived at Poznan Airport, no problems on the tram, and that was my little adventure through Poznan. If you like this content and you appreciated the brief look around Poznan, I appreciate that wasn't all of Poznan, so I do urge you, take the time, have a look at Poznan yourself, and hopefully there will be another video on Poznan when I do return. But until next time, keep progressing, and I will see you in another destination in the next video. See you later.